Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story up Monday on the first impression of Jayden Daniels by teammates and coaches. And obviously it was a very good first impression, but they also know there's a long way to go. All it was a good first impression. The next step is a good training camp and good joint practices and a good season. We don't know how all that's going to unfold, but it was a good first impression. You'll find out why if you go to ESPN.com on Monday. So always keep that in mind. First impression. So anyways, long way to go. Good first impression. Thank you to the gold members who showed up for the private Zoom session with Logan Paulson last week. I felt like I know he enjoyed it, and there were some good questions asked. Everybody got to ask a couple questions, spend a lot of time with Logan. So hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to be doing more of those in the future. I'll do private Zooms myself with the gold members, but also going to get some ex-players on there whenever I can. So if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, go from there. Another couple more programming notes before I get to my interview or my conversation with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. Anyway, I will continue to be doing podcasts throughout the next several weeks. A couple times a week, going to cut back on the number because it's a dead period, but there's still guests to bring on. There's still things to discuss. I already have, going around the NFC East. Also, I talked to Ryan Porter, who has been a quarterback's coach for Jayden Daniels since he was 10 years old. Really good insight there. I'm going to be playing that interview at some point, whether it's this week or next week. So look for that. And there are a couple other guests I'm hoping to get that I think would be a lot of fun for you to hear. And, and then Bram and I, for the club members, are going to be talking a little bit about some of the coaches we've covered over the years, from Steve Spurrier to, Jim Zorn, et cetera, and just some recollections of that. Anyways, and then let's see, I had one more thing. Oh yeah. So for on Monday, I believe the Commanders will announce their new front office additions, from scouts to all the positions that they have added. And so stay tuned for that. For people who want to know, I will maintain that while there are obviously changes, I think the biggest change is how you operate the front office, more so than just about who are you adding. Because you can change one guy who's done a good job for another guy who's done a good job somewhere else, but it's all about how the GM and how that structure is and how they operate below there that makes the difference for, I think, any front office. And I think that's where I think that could be a strength of this front office going forward. Anyway, that's it for me. So, and by the way, happy Father's Day to everybody. And who is a father. And I have some really good kids. So I'm a very proud dad. Anyway, that's it. Here's my conversation with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. Bram, we wrapped up another offseason, and it was a busy offseason, but compared to the last several, it was a football offseason, which was actually very enjoyable and welcome. But I am curious, as we head into the offseason here, the true offseason, how would you sum up Washington's offseason? Or
it's so weird. I've talked to a lot of people about this. There's so many different people here now, in the span of a year. It's really unusual. I mean, turnover in sports is normal, and turnover in any organization. Of course, you and I have been around this one for a long time, so I've seen a lot of people come and go, obviously, through the years, but this one's different, John. It's not only the new owners, and the new coaching staff and the new front office, almost entirely new, and a roster that is going to probably have, at bare minimum, half new faces and probably something like 30 to 35 new players on the 53-man roster when it's all said and done. So it's a completely new team, with some exceptions. And then there's this is the part no one thinks about. All the people I work with in sponsorships and sales, and when we do a lot of events, there's a lot of change there too. So this is, for me, this is a massive amount of change that I think is all kind of sinking in. And what everyone hears about and sees, is what's on the field, and there's a massive amount of change there too. But I would describe it as this is maybe the most unique situation I've ever been in. Like I'm one of the like you and I are like some of the last kind of few standing, and I'm one of them that's like been around it and
Yeah,
inside the building
you've
the
been
last
into
few
it.
years. So it's been really new. And I am excited about all the energy and I am excited about all the changes. I don't want that to come off the wrong way. I am. But it's different. And so I'm going through the process of meeting a lot of new people and getting ready for an unknown because I really don't know how this team's going to perform in the fall.
Well, and that's my thing too. And like, because I do think a lot of the reports have been positive about what we've seen or heard, but I don't think people are sitting there saying, oh my God, they're going to win 10 or 11 games. We don't know, but like I've been very clear that I think what I've seen, Bram, more is good foundational structure being built,
Yep.
more that which is more long term than it is what's the short term success. I don't know. That
Yeah, well, I mean, just go look at what they did. Like this front office came in, they had more cap room than anybody else, or were second or third, whatever in the league. They did not go out of their way to try to take a swing for anybody and spend a lot of that cap room and commit to anybody for any real length of time or at any real like cap breaking cost. So I think they're looking at it that way
yeah.
too, that they're not walking in here thinking like we're going to turn this around in 1 year. They think it's going to take some time. I do think that they baseline the roster. I know we've talked a lot about it, but as it kind of manifested throughout the spring, I really like the energy. I think the attendance is a big deal. Like they know what's being said about them too. Like the attendance to me is a really big deal. The energy on the defensive side of the ball was palpable, especially the last week. I really think that that's been kind of the not blaming you all, like underreported part of this team is what's the defense going to look like and how much better is it going to be? And I think it's going to be significantly, but there are a lot of question marks. But because Jayden Daniels is here and because there's a lot of excitement in and around him and people focus on the quarterback, I think they've lost sight of what I think is the biggest mystery of this team, which is the defensive side of the ball. I haven't seen a lot of what they're going to do, but I have seen some people kind of emerge as what looks to be primary playmakers. And some of them are surprising. So I'm interested to see how that kind of materializes through the summer too.
No, I think that's a good point because when you're right. So much has been focused on Jayden and the offense. And for this team to help Jayden Daniels, they want to rely on a strong defense and run game. And we don't know how that's going to look. Now, I think it's safe to say it'll be better than last year because I don't think you can get worse. And now the things that have been positive developments is the communication at the line of scrimmage. Now, I do believe some of that has been helped by facing a lot of no huddle and hurry up by the offense. So you're forced to communicate, but you hear it a lot more. You have stronger communicators there in general, but there's still questions out there. So I do think like that's a part of it. And there are pieces that we just don't know, like what's going to happen at corner. I like the safety situation, whether or not it's settled. I like what they have there. Corner, I'm just not sure about yet. And, I'm curious to see the impact of how they use the defensive front and guys up there.
Yeah, I think like Dan Quinn's last press conference at the end of minicamp, the break camp one, I thought he said three things that were noteworthy. One that was, totally expected. He's not naming a starting quarterback yet. He's going to make Jayden Daniels earn it, even though we all think we know where it's going, right? The second one was that really stood out to me, and I'll get to the one because we're talking about the defense in a moment. But the second one, if we want to revisit it, is the joint practices are going to be a very big deal
Yeah.
in terms of trying to figure out who the left tackle is. Like
Yeah.
it was like the one kind of competition thing that I felt was newsworthy. That was an acknowledgement of we don't have a set starter there. Our roster is what our roster is. We do think we have competitive players, but when we get to New York and when we get to Miami and when we have those joint practices, we're going to find out. And so I thought there's a calendar date I can circle now and go, okay, maybe we'll start to get some answers at what the line looks like after that, because that's what they want to see. And then the third thing that really stood out to me was Dan Quinn saying out loud, Adam Peters and I are going to have a lot of tough decisions on the defensive side of the ball, which signaled the competition is very high right now. There are a couple of spots, namely corner, where it does feel very every man for himself and go win the jobs, and it's wide open. And so I like the energy and I like the start. And I think it's the thing that I'm really getting more and more excited about is I don't know what they're going to look like. I do know what this coaching staff's track record is. with defenses and turnovers. I'm seeing a couple of people fall into roles very quickly here that I like, but I don't know the full picture yet because they're not showing it to me. And then they're out loud saying the competition is at a point that we already know this is going to be a very competitive summer with some very tough decisions at the end of it. And I like hearing all of that.
Oh, I think you're right. And I think it's going to be, I think safety is going to be one of those that's very interesting because you've got holdovers, they like Quan Martin. They brought in Jeremy Chin, Jeremy Reeves coming back from the injury, key special teams guy. You have holdovers like Forrest and Percy Butler, but they also drafted Dominique Hampton, who's got that size they love. They signed as an undrafted free agent, Tyler Owens, who's got that size that they love. So I think whether the front line is a certain way, I think the depth they built here, linebacker for sure is better. So I think those are where some of those hard decisions are really going to come. And, we hear this every year, like anytime, the tough decisions, but I do think as far as depth goes, they have some good depth pieces there. But the frontline stuff, I think, what did you see? It's so hard to tell. I did like Emmanuel Forbes, I felt was like better with his jams and things like that, but we still don't know where he's at in year 2. Like he's a key guy here. Do we know what Mike Davis can do here? Noah I'm just going to call him Noah because I always have to write down his pronunciation of his last name. Good luck with that, Bram.
I've been practicing it, John. I'm convinced he's going to make the team.
So I think so. I think so
practicing saying his last name.
I think so too. And I think he's actually had a decent spring. So
yeah, he's one I'm watching actually. That position group is probably the most unknown and most competitive position group because as it stands right now, they don't have what I would call a traditional number 1 corner that's like an obvious person that is going to be covering A.J. Brown or C.D. Lamb. And at this point, it's hard to know who would even be the starting tandem, and I know Joe Witt says don't at me with starters. And I think part of that is I think they're going to play a lot of them, whoever makes the team. So let's start there. Like, I don't know who's going to make the team, let alone be the starters. I don't believe Emmanuel Forbes is in any kind of danger of being cut at this point. But could he play less than some other ones? Sure. We're going to see how the competition of this plays out throughout the summer. And that's been a group that, at least throughout the spring and what we've seen, which is a limited amount of the practices, they've been running tandems in and out the whole time. So they're testing out everybody. 1 week it's Mike Davis, who's a veteran, who's getting a lot of run. And then the next week, Forbes is back out there. Igbenogany, I've seen him on special teams. He's got a lot of speed. So I think there's a possibility that they might be able to find something in him. He's a former first-round talent who has jumped around the league a lot, but this is now he's with the same coaching staff he was with last year. So maybe that helps unlock it for him. Maybe St. Juice, like I would say right now, I see him a ton on the field. So I feel like he's kind of a front runner to get a lot of time, but I don't think anything's a lock. So that position group is probably the most competitive position group. And in most cases, most teams like to have, their 3 frontline starters, the slot and the 2 outside corners. In this case, I could make a case that this team is going to have a rotating group of corners where a lot of them are going to play heavy amounts of series at this point. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it plays out in the season.
Well, I think then it's going to will be matchup dependent too, because if they're looking to say, okay, like in this matchup, this guy is better, then maybe you're going to use Davis more in a certain game than Emmanuel Forbes, for example. If because like Emmanuel Forbes versus A.J. Brown, I think we saw that matchup. And, I was talking to somebody from last year or during the season where, Emmanuel's gotten stronger, but it's not strong enough to handle A.J. Brown. And, that was the one fear. Like they felt like his weight wasn't an issue until he faced A.J. Brown. So like it could be matchup dependent as to what they do or what rotations they use. And I'm not sold that they were in love with St. Juice, but I do think they're very intrigued by him. But you're right. Like he's almost always out there with that first group. He's been the one consistent player on that side. So, I also, Bram, I'm also curious to see like the impact of, to be honest, better coaching. I think better teaching, how that impacts some of the holdover guys, and then also the way they handle their pressures. And then how does Jamin Davis develop as a
Yeah.
down, as a situational, whether he like, I kept calling situational pass rusher, but then all I ever saw him working at over minicamp was with the defensive line as an end, right? And going
Yes.
through drills and all that. So how he develops there, what does that do for them? And I'm not expecting him to become Micah Parsons, but can he help them in that area? And I think we don't know that answer yet. So there's a lot of unknowns in a lot of places for sure. And I also like that. I'm sorry, not the one last thing too, but I am curious, like, how does John Allen and Daron Payne, I think they're going to be energized by playing in this front too.
Sounds like Allen is. I mean, it
Yeah,
sounds like,
sure.
it sounds like he is. And actually, I saw him whenever he did his press thing, and I've noticed him. He looks really in shape. And I've heard he's been like all the stuff that happened last season and then the early part of the offseason where people were questioning it, does he want to be here? Um, I had heard early in the spring that he was totally back and all in and
Yeah.
on board and was in the weight room a ton and all that stuff. Was around the building a ton. So my worries about him kind of were gone pretty early in the offseason. And he looks good, actually. There's a few guys that really look like are in great shape. Like McLaurin looks like he's in great shape. Allen did too, to me. Looked like he was really in great shape. On Jamin, I think you could look at this a couple different ways. And I was talking to Logan Paulson about it the other day on the sideline. I get why they want to try this with him, the coaching staff. I actually think his best attribute is just go get the quarterback, go get the running back, run forward, use your speed, use your athleticism. We haven't seen him tried as a pass rusher, basically, or a split end or a stand-up end or however they're going to look at it. And it's an ask of a transition in a contract year. So it's a lot to ask of somebody, but I'm for this idea. Now, whether it works for him, I don't know. And they probably don't know either. But I am of the opinion that this is the way to go and to try this. And if it works for him, then you think about re-signing him. And if it doesn't, because we've seen, him at weak side linebacker and we've seen his issues in coverage, I just think it's a better spot for him to try to become. So is it going to work out for him? I don't know. And only the coaches and he know how that's going at this point because I haven't heard anything about it. But I'm for this idea. Let's try this with him and see how it goes. The issue is if he's not an impact player, or doesn't have a good transition to this, is there any going back to linebacker at any point in time? And I think that's the risk that you take with doing this. But I'm for what they're trying to do because I do think it's his best attributes.
Yeah. And I also think and I pointed this out on the podcast a couple of days ago, it's really hard to measure because I watched him more this week than I was able to, in the OTAs or whatever. But you can't say oh, he can't do. I don't know if he can do it. I see what I see early on, but it's also early on. So you have to give him, okay, this is what it looks like in June. Let's see what it looks like in late July. Let's see what it looks like in August, mid-August, late August. In preseason games, joint practices, there's a lot to learn as a pass rusher. It's not just, oh, you're a good athlete, get down there and do it, because now you have to learn how to use your hands in a different way, in a different method. And, you have to learn how to attack the tackle. You have to learn how to, the angles and all that, the footwork. And I see him working on that a lot. Right. And, so I think there's a lot to it that he has to get used to see. But I think if they didn't start to see, you see the athleticism, but if you don't see more, then it would be hard. So I'm curious to see where it goes there's clearly no judgment yet, because you just, from our perspective, you just can't, who knows? They know what they're looking at. They know the daily progress. They know the footwork. They know the hand placement, et cetera.
Yeah. And, I think this kind of falls in line with what Quinn and Witt said, and really Quinn early, where he said, we're going to, and I'm always for this when coaches say it, we want to try to take someone's best skill sets and we want to find out what they do best and use that. That's what coaches are supposed to do. It's not you fit into my scheme. It's what do you do well and how can we utilize your skill set? And I think we're going to find out if Jamin can do this. That's what's different about this.
Yes.
I mean, that's what's really different here. It's not like he came out of college and he was like this. This is an all new ask of him. So, I want to be fair to him because I understand that this is a transition they're asking him to do in a new defense. And, I think part of it is They don't have what looks to be a premier pass rush end, at least on one side of the field, and they're looking for an answer there too. So they're asking him to try to be potentially at least a part-time answer to that. So, this is going to be out of a comfort zone, I think, for him. So that's why I want to be fair to him about it. But I do look at his skill set, and I think it's the right idea because I think he could be good at it. So
Right.
we'll just find out.
Yeah, and I also listen. What I like too is I love Frankie Lou. I mean, that guy's going to be good here, and I
Yes.
think how they use him. But the other impact is the Bobby Wagner effect on the entire group, and it's just I think his presence. I don't know how much like you notice when you ask guys when they start talking about him. There's a reverential tone that they use that I have not seen for a guy here. I don't know. It's been a long time. You'd have to go back. I mean, they know he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like you don't pick up guys like that late in their career, but like very often. And I just think the reverential tone, but you watch him out there when you're calling out alerts or audible defensive audibles. I'm watching him go through special teams drills, Bram, in the spring. I'm like, this dude's going to the Hall of Fame. He's been a great linebacker, and he's still out there going through special teams work. I just think the tone he sets, those are the little things that I'm not like, it's because I think from the outside, people look and see the roster. They look at names and compare names to last year. Like, oh, it's not, what's better, what's worse. But I'm as curious about the intangibles of what this group, whether it's Wagner and the staff, brings and how that impacts the overall success this year and down the road.
Yeah, with Wagner, like I'd love to ask him this because I haven't talked to him yet, but I have a feeling like, is he here partially because he wants to learn from Quinn and Witt to become a coach at some point? And Ken Norton is, because these are people that he has, not that his playing career is over yet, but he knows he's in the twilight of it, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it's going to be for however long he can keep going. Does he want to learn how to become a coach and transition into that? Because he seems to be acting like one and he seems to be being pitched like one too. Yeah. So, coach on the field. The other two names that really stand out to me so far, you mentioned Quan Martin. I know everybody saw the viral catch the other day, which was crazy on that interception. That was nuts. But they like him.
They like him.
And they said it from the get-go, and they said we scouted him and we liked him coming out of college. And so that's always a really good sign. And he is fitting this movable part around the ball, plays fast, plays violent, can catch the ball even behind his back. Like they're looking at him, I think, and seeing the future of a turnover machine. And I think if they can unlock where he's supposed to be, and that seems to be off to a really good start, he's going to be a versatile weapon for them. And the other one that's really standing out to me is Jeremy Chin. Like they're taking a chance on him, and he's taking a chance on them. He already came out and said he was offered more money to go somewhere else, but he wanted to come here because of the opportunity that was here. I've seen him kind of in the box. I've seen him play single high. I've seen him running around in a traditional safety set. He's extremely vocal, and he's another one that I think they look at and go, extremely violent player, downhill player, gets to the ball, could be a turnover maker. I smell more fumbles than interceptions with someone like him, but that type of player, versatile, trust him on the backside. He can go get the quarterback on the front side, will help in run support. Those two players, and Wagner too, but those two players who are at a younger point in their career, are the ones that are really, really standing out to me and seem to be standing out to them and kind of exemplify what I think they're going to try to build here, which is a defense that is hard to figure out because it has movable parts.
Right.
And these are two players that are extremely versatile, extremely movable. And if the offense gets it wrong with them, are potential players that make game-changing plays for them.
Right. And what I like about like the Chin signing, it's a 1-year deal. But then they go and draft Hampton, who offers similar size and some of those skills, right? He can play inside as well. And so I think you have guys, and Tyler Owens, I think, fits that same build where if Chin, let's say he's okay and you got to move him, maybe these guys develop over the course of the year. And this is where you start looking at 2025. But I like, but you can tell what they want from that position. Big guys who can play in the box as well, play deep, play in the box.
Chin's imposing too. I mean, for someone when he is standing back there as a safety, he's an imposing presence.
He is.
So it's like I get why he had such a great start to his career. I mean, he beyond looks the part and looks almost oversized as a safety, which is why I think he's kind of this tweener position. But when you unlock it right with someone like that, it's someone who could have a massive impact on games. And those are the two names I'm seeing here early that look like they're trending in a direction where they could have major, major impacts for this team.
Agree. So let's flip to the offense then, because obviously Jayden Daniels' progress, it's funny because you hear a ton of positives about him. When you hear all that stuff, like, how are you processing all of what you're hearing and seeing about him?
I take it at face value. Like they don't need to sell anybody on him. If trust me, this, sports and teams are, gossip factories. If it was not exactly what they were hoping for, we would hear that too. I would take that at face value and let's just see what happens. The fact is the guy's work ethic is exactly what we were told it was at LSU and Arizona State, at least here. He's showing up before everybody else. Luke McCaffrey seems to be wise and showing up and becoming best friends with him, doing that. I think it shows to me on the field in just little ways. And again, I don't get to see the practice film and I only get to see the limited amount like everybody else. But in the limited amount that I've seen so far, he feels ahead. And I think like Dan Quinn acknowledged that the other day, that he feels a little bit ahead. He's not anointing him anything and he's not putting expectations on him. This team has gone out of its way to not pressurize him, not put expectations on him, not make him the quote unquote face of anything yet, not throw him on commercials or send him to parties or be the voice or the face of the team. And honestly, actually think in the limited amount that I've spoken to him, it seems like it's his personality to not be that he actually is humble and would rather not be kind of forward and front facing. If he's a star quarterback, if he becomes that, it's going to find him and he's going to have to deal with it. But for now, he's not walking in the door asking to be, with the ego attached to it, which is a really interesting sign too. And then you watch him on the field. And the thing, I think I talked to you last time about this, I think it really stands out to me is he's making decisions really fast. Yeah. And that to me is a really, really, really good sign. He knows where he needs to go with the ball. This is all new to him too. There's not a lot of double clutching or overthinking or, and honestly, like Mariota seems more indecisive, sometimes in the practices than he does. And he's been around for 10 years in the league. So that's a really good sign to me. And listen, I haven't seen the athleticism on display because they haven't really, done 11 on 11 with contact. So like, until you do that, you don't really get to see what game speed looks like for him in the NFL. So that's still a mystery to me, but everything else is just trending up. And mainly it's just because he gets rid of the ball so fast that he appears to have gotten a grasp of whatever this portion of the offense that's in very quickly. And that's just a very good sign to me.
Oh, I agree with all of that. And it's funny, there's a couple things with like the stuff you're hearing on the side, like, and this is what I'm hearing, what they're saying publicly is what I've heard privately from others as well. And in the past, if a guy's not doing that, typically you hear it like down the road. You're not going to necessarily hear it now because they're not going to try and damage, the confidence of somebody right away, but you're not going to hear the laudatory praise that you do with him. And it doesn't mean that he's going to be this great player this year. It just means the behind the scenes stuff, they really like what they see. And when I had Logan on this the Zoom for Gold members the other day, he was talking about that. Like, listen, like if you want to be a great quarterback, you have to do all that stuff, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to become a great quarterback. It's just that if you want to be, you have to do it, but he's doing it. And he figured that out a long time ago, because this is what he's done. So I think the other part I'm curious to see in the summertime, Bram, is how his legs then start to impact coverages, how defensive play. Like right now, you're going to play a certain way because he's not, the legs aren't going to be a factor, right? So like that's the part we don't know. How does that? Because you would see with Robert back in the day, how would regulate coverages at times, and especially in the red zone. This is what I'm really so like. There was one year with Robert in the red zone, where this rookie year, he got better in the second half of the year. And I was writing a story on his rookie year, and I remember talking to Shanahan. I went back through the numbers. His red zone numbers improved. And I asked Mike, does that a sign that he got better and like that he was making better decisions down here? He said, goes, not really. And it's like, not to dismiss that aspect, but he said what happened was because of his skill set, teams knew they couldn't play a man down there. And so they had to play zone. So they always they could send out a zone beater every time. And it just helped the overall offense. But it all started with his skill set. So that's what I'm also curious to see as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and
No.
because practice hasn't been structured that way and because of the rules and plus nobody
Right.
wants to get hurt anyway.
Oh, no,
He's not going to get hurt. He's not going to get hit. Like they're not asking him to run the ball. We're not there yet. So we haven't seen it because then, what we need to judge are instincts. When does he run? Like what does his speed look like at this level as opposed to the last level? Because we saw what it looked like at the last level. What does it look like here? Robert's speed was still off the charts, before he injured his knee. It was still off the charts. Justin Fields' speed is off the charts. Lamar Jackson's speed is off the charts. Is Jayden going to be like that? I don't know. Not until we see it. Now, I know he's extremely athletic, but is it going to look like that on this level? I don't know yet. And then the other thing, I would just say this as it stands out now, and I haven't seen him uncork a lot of passes under pressure yet either to really gauge the arm strength. But what does not stand out to me, and I think he's very accurate, is he doesn't have like a Herbert arm. Like he doesn't have some kind of rocket arm. Like I don't sense that, see that when I watch him. So I think accuracy is going to be a big, big, big part. And then obviously, like what I loved about him coming in and what I'm hoping is going to manifest when we get to the real practices and all the real games is that he really is a pass first quarterback that can use his legs to hurt you secondarily until we see it on this level and he's processing and has to make choices. We don't know that yet, but that's what I think is going to happen. So I'm very bullish about that. That said, like, the arm strength, it's not that he doesn't have bad arm strength, but it's not top level Herbert. Like at least that's what I've seen so far. Right. So accuracy is really going to matter for him.
And I agree. Like coming out, it was good arm, not a cannon. That's fine. But to me, the strength of his passing is accuracy, touch, and anticipation. And I think those are like the anticipatory throws is the thing that has stood out to people in the organization when I've talked to them. So, and Terry McLaurin talked about the other day. So that's a big deal, but that's how if you don't have that, and again, not many guys have a cannon and it's okay, but he has good arm strength. He can make every throw, but to become an elite passer, how are you going to get there? And it's like his is accuracy, touch, and anticipation.
Yeah. I think I don't want to I'm not comparing him to Pat Mahomes, but what really stands out to me about him more than anything is his instincts are incredible. Just absolutely, positively incredible. He just makes these split-second decisions, and he's right so often. And then add in the work ethic, the accuracy, and the ability to run. And now you have what is the best quarterback in the NFL going right now by far, and maybe one of the best ever that I've ever seen. I hope Jayden has these types of instincts, but we don't really know because once we're out there, you script up all these plays and then the defense does something and you have to make choices. What are your instincts? And that's what we just haven't seen yet. In college, at least in his last year at LSU, they were off the charts great, with some exceptions of he took some, we talked about this a lot around the draft. He took some cartoonish hits that I'm scared of, like at the NFL level that hopefully, won't happen. And maybe he'll be a little more protective of his body or realize that the speed level of this game is a little higher, which is why, again, I want to see what his speed looks like on this level as opposed to the last level, partially because of, I think some of the hits that he took last year, and I don't want to see that replicated here. But his instincts are what we just don't know. Like, what carries over? Like, what does the work ethic and all this stuff do for his instincts as just a player? Because they were great, which led him to the season that he had, to winning the Heisman Trophy, to putting up stats in the best league in college football that are off the charts. To me, it's all a really good sign that it's going to carry over, but this is a different game. You and I both know that. This is a really, really, really different game. So let's see how that carries over and let's see what it looks like in real time. And that's why I'm like you. I'm really excited about him. I'm really excited about everything I hear about him. I know what his athleticism is. I see the work ethic. I like the humility and the humbleness. I really do. I think I think that actually fits this area a little bit. Like I really like that. So all of that are A++, arrow pointing up. But until he plays, I just can't answer a lot of these questions. And because he's a unique player, his instincts are going to matter like significantly. And I don't know what they are until they're tested.
So let's get to a couple other guys real quick. Jahan Dotson, what'd you see?
You know, it's limited, but like they're having him run routes again, which I think is going to be, you know, good for him, good for the offense. You know, the fact that they want to get the ball downfield more is a sign to me that he'll have a better role in this offense. And, you know, I think his strength is route running and he's got soft hands. And I think they, you know, if they're going to take advantage of that and not turn him into what was, I don't know what his role was last year, and I think it was a mistake and part of the offense that they built. But I'm hopeful, and also if their offense is going to be really good, they're going to need him to be 1A or clear number 2 because like look at the receiving core, like this is not an extraordinarily deep group. So I think they're going to need him to step up and be a first round talent. But I think it's there and it's possible because I think this offense could be a better fit for him.
Yeah, and the one thing I still want to see is him getting out better against press coverage. Because if he can't do that, it's going to limit his game. He can still be effective, can still make plays for them, but that would help his game tremendously. Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler.
Eckler, I love. Eckler, I wonder if he's going to be on kick returns. I don't know who's going to get that one, but like they got some choices to make there. You got to put a real dynamic player back there, and I think it's a 2-cut player, not a 1-cut player. So, and he's that. So I don't know. Let's see what works out with him. I think Eckler is going to be perfect for this offense. As far as Robinson goes, I have the same questions about him that I had last year with Bieniemy. Like, does he actually really just fit what they do? That said, I've been a huge fan of his, you know, since he came in here. He's old school to me. He is a tough, hard nose, give him the ball. He gets better as the game goes along, tough to tackle, runs hard. So I haven't seen a lot, but I would just say I'm not worried about him. And I think he's a really good player in any offense, and they'll figure it out with him.
And we know the offensive line is a question mark for people waiting to talk about that. That hasn't changed. It was there at the beginning of the spring. It's still there now. But so we'll get to that in a later episode. But tight end. Benson, Zach Ertz, Cole Turner, all that group. Any thoughts on those guys?
Ertz like Wagner seems like a leader to me, so I think that's really good. I think, you know, how long he's here, I don't know, but if he can help turn Ben Sinnott into a frontline starter, Sinnott to me reads as someone who's going to be very versatile for them. Could he be an H-back? Could he be a fullback? Is he a pulling tight end? And then he's very athletic and can be a threat down the field. So I haven't seen a lot, but I'm excited about the promise of him. And, you know, behind that, you know, let's see if Armani Rogers has kind of a comeback because he's a great athlete. I didn't mean to forget
John Bates, sorry.
Yeah, John Bates as well. John Bates, you know, to me is a traditional, very good, valuable blocking tight end. Rogers is the one I'm interested to see because he's a very good athlete. Can he win a job with a new staff? Can he impress a second staff as an undrafted free agent? And considering his ability as an athlete, I think I'd give him half a shot to do it.
Bram, I appreciate the time as always. Great insight. Thanks a lot, man. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Bram for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Wednesday night / Thursday morning with another episode, so I'll talk to you next time.